Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us here. I'm Josh Mings, Director of Marketing here at Luxion. I'd like to welcome you all to our latest KeyShot webinar. This week, we have a special guest, the one and the only Tim Feher, auto industry professional, purveyor of eye-melting visuals. You can see all that goodness on his website at feherfactor.com. That's F-E-H-E-R factor.com. He doles out his wisdom in the KeyShot forums, so if you ever have a question related to rendering cars, or really anything, he's always up for helping, and he really posts some incredible work there. Speaking of answering those questions, that's what we're going to be doing live here today. Tim's going to be taking your questions, showing you how he works his magic in KeyShot. Here's how it's going to sort of happen. You ask your questions via the webinar question panel there in the GoToMeeting sidebar. We'll have people looking that over and stand by to sort out and pass those questions over to Tim. So everyone ready? Get your questions up there. And Rex, what's our first question for Mr. Feher?
Hey Josh, excellent intro. Thank you for that. We do not have any questions posted to the questions board yet, so I was just wondering, we have this beautifully crafted scene that we're seeing in Tim's real-time view here, but I'm wondering if, Tim, you can go ahead and give us a little background or overview on your KeyShot process and kind of start from the beginning. So where do you get your CAD models from? Is that something you're working on yourself, or is that something given to you? And then maybe talk about your import methods. Are you using a plugin? Are you using the direct importer? So yeah, what do you think, Tim?
All right, guys. Thanks for the intro. This particular model here was purchased on Turbo Squid. When I originally received this model, the first thing I'll do is I'll open it up in Maya. I do all my work out of Maya. We have a team of modelers and data people that put these together for us. I have the luxury of having that done for me. I don't have to do a lot of the modeling at all, or the setting up of the tree structure. But when I do get a model that is a little bit different than I'm used to, what I'll do is I will break down the whole model. So when I originally got this Ferrari, it was all pretty much big chunks. All the pieces were together as one big piece. So I went through and I separated all the sheet metal from the plastic parts. And then I separated, the wheels were one model. All the meshes were together. So I separated all the meshes. So we were able to, I'm able to break down this tire a little bit more to give me more flexibility within KeyShot to get the look that I'm wanting. So for example, this front wheel here, let me do show only. There we go. So on this particular wheel, it was one big model, and broke it down to have just the tire. Let me change my background here so you guys can see this a little easier because the tire's melting in. We have a wheel separated. We separate the tire, and then we have the brake and caliper assembly on it. So I'll go through the whole model and break everything down, separate things, and make new materials. Another thing that I'll do before I import into KeyShot is I will look at all my materials, and if I have black plastic in the front of the vehicle and I have black plastic in the rear of the vehicle and they're linked together as one model, I'll separate those and have those as separate materials. I want to be able to give myself as much flexibility within KeyShot as possible. So sometimes with your lighting scenarios, your black plastic might look really nice in the front, but then it blends into something in the back because of the lighting. So being able to have those two black pieces separated from each other, you can adjust each plastic according to your lighting. So that's the first thing I do with these models. And after we get that all together, I keep the wheels and tires separate from the body. Now the reason why I do that, it gives you, you're able to lower the body onto the tires, and you're able to move the tires inboard or outboard much easier than if you had these wheels within your tree structure up here. So it just makes things that you'll be able to move quicker and easier within your scene. So that's why I keep the tires on the outside. Let's see. Once we have all that, I will import into KeyShot. Now when I do my import, these are the settings that I will use, which is, I always, we'll say it's new geometry. I always do center geometry and snap to ground. And I always have my automatic, no, I'm sorry, keep original for my scale. Now before we do save it out of Maya, we freeze all transformations, clear history, we make the model as clean as possible. So when it goes into KeyShot, your scale should be at 1. That's basically the data prep side of it that I do. And then once we get into KeyShot, then we will start assigning materials, things of that nature. Do we have any questions yet?
Yeah, thanks, Tim, for that overview. We have a couple questions on headlights. How do you assign dedicated lights, like the headlights, and how to make the headlights look real? Can you go over that for us?
Yeah. Let me reopen this scene here. Remember earlier we were talking about being able to lock these scene sets. All right, let me get on default here. Okay, so let's go over the headlights. I'm going to show just the headlamps. Okay, get the background a little brighter. What's important here on the headlamps is what is happening inside your headlamp light here. So let me hide the outside piece. Let me make this material brighter so everyone can see easier. Make that my centering point. Okay. When I light up a headlamp, I do not put the emissive shader on the light bulb itself. When you do that, you lose all the shape of the lens. What I will do is, I'm going to hide this piece now. You usually have a cup. If you don't have a little cup in there, you want to model yourself up one. Let me zoom up here. Go into performance, so maybe, there we go. You see that better. So we have the cup. What I will do is I will put another sphere inside here, inside this cup, and that is what's going to be used to light up the lens. Now the reason why I do that is undo part, unhide part. I want to be able to see the marbling of this this lens. If you look at lights when they're on, you can see the lens looks like a marble, and inside the marble the light's on, the HIDs. So being able to, when you put another piece of geometry inside that and have that light up instead of the bulb, you're able to capture that marbling inside this lens. Now in saying that, I don't use a normal glass for this lens. I use a gem. Gem gives you a little bit more refraction inside the lens. So the more refraction you put in there, you're able to get more of a shape out of the lens instead of just having it as glass. If you also put a little black piece of another smaller sphere that's black, that helps inside this lens, because then you got your black reflecting into the outer gem, Now that black is actually starting to marble inside the lens too. Now the next thing is I see a lot of people, when they light up the headlamps, they want the IES light or the emissive to actually light up the whole headlamp. Again, when you do that, you lose a lot of detail within your headlamp itself. So you want to use the IES so you can tell that the light's on, but not so much light up your scene with that, because you still want to see the marbleization of the lens here. If you render, I do all my rendering in 32-bit. If you render in 32-bit, you have all the light information. That is where you will take that light and intensify the pixels, and that's what's going to give you the glow of the light being turned on. It's not so much the render. The render's there to give you the base of the light, but in Photoshop, working in 32-bit, that's where you're going to get all of that's where all the magic happens on the glow part. So if you keep your lights down low so you can see the marbleization of the lens, then you'll have a good set of headlamps. That was a lot of talking for, sorry if I talked a little too much on that one. Anything else? So here, let me give you, let me go to my website here real quick to show you a sample. Can you see this, guys? Josh?
You can see that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, we can
All
see
right,
it.
cool. Yep. So if you go in here, I have a light inside of this lens, and that's why you're able to see the outer lens. And I put a texture on here to give you those little dots within that bulb. Let's see if we got another one. Here's another one. If you put the emissive right onto this lens, you wouldn't gotten any of this detail. You'd have to do 2 renders and piece them together within Photoshop. So hopefully that
Tim,
answers the question.
the modeled look there, I was wondering if that modeled look on the lens, the kind of splotches you see, is that something you added in post, or
Nope.
was that
That's
from
part of
the
that
render?
gem, the gem material.
Oh, I see. So that's some of that fire, that color coming out from the
Yep.
gem?
Yep.
Very cool.
Yep. All right. Let's see if there's another one in here. I don't know if I have another. No, I don't. Oh, we got this one. This one is this one's a little bit different. I did put so here's the difference between the two. I put the light right on this lens, and you can see I don't have no shape in here. While it looks like it's on, to me, I'm losing the shape of the bulb or the lens inside the light. If I would do this again, that's the way I would do it.
Like we have a lot of questions on lights and lighting. Some want some more explanation on lights, sort of step by step, and Vitaly is wondering how you set up your IES lights, and would like to hear more about that.
Okay, perfect. What I'm going to do, I'm going to open up this file again. What I'll do is I'm going to make this whole Ferrari one material, just so we can move a little bit quicker. So I can move quicker and show a little bit more, and then we'll go over these lights. As you can see in this particular scene, I'm going to start from scratch so you guys can see what's going on here. You can see I have a bunch of different IES lights onto this vehicle. What I'm going to do is I'll turn them all off so you can see what the scene looks like with just the dome lighting it. So you can see a lot of the shine is off of the vehicle. It still looks good. It's still got nice liquid on the sheet metal, but it's missing that little extra pop that I like to call on it. So I'm going to turn the lights back on. You can see now you're starting to get little white highlights from the ball, this ball up here, and then the IES lights shining onto these wheels. So let me see if I can find those IES lights for the wheels. So there's one here. I don't even know where that one's at. Zoom out.
Tim, are those just spheres that you've added through the edit menu inside of KeyShot, or is that something you import with your model separately?
I import it through the edit, add geometry, add sphere. That's how
And
I
then you
add
just
the
group
lights.
them all into one.
Yep. So I tell you what, let me just turn these all off, and we will light the process from the beginning. So I have this vehicle here now. I'm going to add an IES light. I'm just going to add geometry, add a sphere. Now what that does is puts it right in the middle of my scene. Very easy to find. What I'll do from here is there's two ways you can move this sphere. You can do it by your translations down here under the position, or you can right-click on the sphere and hit move, and you'll get your little axis, and you can move it that way. I recommend you use it by the position translations down here instead of using it by the move tool. It just gives you a little bit easier. You're able to move the light without having to zoom out of your camera all the time to find where your light's at to move it. So moving it through these controls here, you don't have to get out of your view. So I'm going to move this up first. We'll say 100. And you see where the sphere is starting to move now. I'm going to go 300, and I'll back out a little bit. So that's the first thing I'll do. Now, next thing I'll do is I'm going to add a IES profile to this sphere. So I'll right-click on the model, and I'm going to say Edit Material. I will click into the IES profile. Now, I really wish I could tell you where I got these IES lights, and I cannot for the life of me remember where I found them. And I've used a lot of different ones, and these seem to be the best out there that I've found. They're called Erie Spotlights. Now this is I don't know if this is true or not, but these lights for me doesn't give you a lot of speckles that some people might find with using IES lights. So depending on the intensity of your light, you start getting speckles on different materials, and that can be really frustrating. I found that these particular lights really do not give off any speckles anywhere. So that's why I kind of stuck with these. And if I do find where I found these, I will definitely pass it along to everybody, but I can't find it. So I'm going to do a 800 watts, turn it on. This particular IES profile is like a pin light. You can tell by how skinny the IES light is here. Let me change that so you can see that we'll change the shape. We'll say clear glass. And now this one's a little bit wider, showing putting the light dispersed along the car a little bit more. So what I'll do now, as you can see, it gives you a hard ground shadow, which is nice sometimes. Well, most of the time it's nice. You can, now what I do, I will move this light with my X, Y, and Z. We'll say 200. I'm going to move it to the side. Okay. Now when you do this, you want to be in the angle that you're going to be using these IES lights for. You don't want to put IES lights on your scene without having your angle active, because that makes a big difference in how these lights look. Now here's the reason why I use the position XYZ, is because now I can't see my light. I don't know where it's out in space. For me to move it, if I was using it by the move tool, I'd have to zoom out, find it, move it, go back to my camera, and that just bugs me. So I use the XYZ down here. So say I want to go 500. Now you can see I can move the light the way I want it and see instantly in my scene. Next thing with the IES lights, the tendency is want to really just blow the light into the scene to really light everything up. In doing so, you can get a lot of hot spots, and we don't want that for the most part. So I will play with the intensity of these these lights. This is at 1. I'll go to 0.1. And I want a hint of that blue. It's not that I don't want to light my scene with that light itself. I just want the light to enhance my scene. So I will pick a wattage that just I can start seeing the blue hints within my sheet metal. And I'll look at that and say, oh, that's pretty good. Let me get another one in there. Maybe I want to add a little pin line in this front end so we can see the front end a little bit more. So I'll go back to my spheres, add another one. Now we're going to move this one up. We'll say 200. And real quick, edit material. Again, we'll go to IS lights. Here we go, we'll just pick one. All right, now I'm going to move this forward, which I believe it's this one. There we go. I am going to move it closer down. We'll say 50. Nope, 100. And we'll move it out a little bit more. And now I am going to rotate. All done through your controls right here, not by the move tool. And I've been working with KeyShot probably for 8 years, and I still can never remember the XYZ and what's X, what's Y.
Tim, if you press Z, you can bring up your coordinate legend. So if you click in the real-time view,
yeah,
and then bring up your coordinate legend, then you can reference that to find.
That's what I usually do. I go up here and hit that so I can see.
Yeah.
Well, you'd think I would know that by now, just automatically that, okay, you know, X is left, right, whatever.
Sure.
Okay, so now you get the light to basically where you want it, and now it's all about toning the light down. Again, I just wanted hint of that light, so I'm going to edit material. I'm at multiplier of 1. We'll say 0.1. We'll say 0.05. Now it's really dull, and now I'd probably go back and move that light closer back to the vehicle. It's a lot of just going back and forth and playing. Oh, not that one. There's no right or wrong, or this is how you do it. You're just playing until you find that right sweet spot. And it could take you 2 minutes, or it could take you 10 minutes. It all just, you know, some days you're lucky and some days you're not. So I would sit here a little bit longer, move this light closer. I'd probably angle it so the light points towards the left of the vehicle, so the light's just kind of skimming across the sheet metal. Another thing that you want to do with these lights, a lot of times you want to work the edge of the light, not so much the middle of the light, how I have it right now. We have all the intensity on the car right in the middle. You want to rotate these lights around so you're using the edge of the light to light your vehicle. So if I do 60, let me go 90 so you can see it a little bit more. And now I'm going to back it up. There you go. So now I'm using the edge of the light to light this front end. I don't have the main focus of the light on the vehicle. That also helps on keeping the shape of your sheet metal when lighting a vehicle. Before you start lighting a vehicle, you have to ask yourself, what are you doing? Are you creating an image for a product or reveal of a vehicle? Or are you doing an image to create emotion, excitement for the vehicle? Because that's two different ways of lighting a car. If you're doing it for the product, you want to showcase as much of the body lines and the materials on that vehicle as possible. So in your dark areas, even though it's dark, like these tires, even though they're dark and they're in shadow, you still have to create the image so you can see the tires. People want to see what's the vehicle made out of. Now, if you're doing an image for emotion, you're trying to create excitement for the car or some type of emotion, then your lighting can be a little bit more drama, and your dark areas, you can go a little bit darker, but I always try to show every piece of the vehicle as much as possible. Like when I light this car, I want to see all these body lines. What makes this car beautiful is all the shapes. So if you have light and you're blowing out the side of this vehicle and you're not seeing these different shapes, then you're basically losing your car. You're not showcasing the car the way it should be. So when lighting, that's always on my mind. Am I showing everything? Do I see all the materials? Is there a part blending into another part? If so, I got to change that material so they pop off of each other. Trying to create depth.
So, Tim, I just want to clarify that. So when you're working on a scene, you're more concerned with the actual appearance of the materials than the actual physical accuracy of the materials. So
it's a tricky thing. Yeah, I mean, obviously you got to make the materials look like the materials in real life, but at the same time, on how you light it, even though that area of the car might be dark with how we have the light, we still got to try to enhance that area to pull the shape of that material or the shape of the vehicle out in that area. The one thing when I look at an image, and if I don't see what should be there because it's just the gammas are off or whatever, I'm going to point it out every time and have it fixed. And if I do the same thing, they'll have me fix it. It's just something that we do. We want the shape of the vehicle. You want to show the vehicle. Yep.
Right. So it takes your eye and the creative direction, and
yep.
That's why you do
You got to look at the image, no matter how big or small. Even if you're doing a key fob or anything, you always got to have a center, a focus point, a main focus. If you have your whitest whites are in 5 different locations on your image, you're not having the person look at your image the way you want it. You got to have a focus point that your eye goes to, and then you just slowly go around, just like a painting or anything else. You want a focus point, and then you have the viewer move around the image to see all the different parts of it.
Right.
So if you want your the viewer to look at your car, you don't want your focus point to be the sky, or you don't want your focus point to be that sun glare. That's not the part of the image. The image is supposed to be the car. You want to feel the sun glare. You don't want to actually see it, if that makes sense.
Okay, we have a question about the environment and the HDRI. So I know you have a couple other scene sets here. I think this one maybe used more IES lights and physical lights,
Yep.
but can you take a look at one of the other scenes that uses some more outdoor lighting?
Sure. We can go over this one.
And it might be good to tell them how you set those scene sets up, how you set up your scenes over there and your view sets, and what you're actually doing over there. Because that's all of a sudden there's a quick switch right there. So how are you doing this? How are you using the software to switch to different environments?
It's magic. No. KeyShot 5, they have added this great feature called scene sets. Now we've always had view sets in cameras. Now a camera, what that does when you create a camera, it just creates that angle of the scene, that camera. What a view set does, it not only does it record the camera settings that you have, it also records the backplate you have, the HDR you used, and any of the other adjustments you've done to that HDR as one. So that camera now is a view set, so you can switch from view set to view set, and you can actually change your whole scene. So this particular view set here is one background. If I click on my background 2, that 2 is a view set, and it changed the background, it changed the angle of the car, and that is in the dome. Okay, that's what view sets do. Now, what scene sets do, it actually records what you have on your screen at the time you made the scene set. So let's do a little experiment here. Right now, I have a yellow Ferrari. I'm going to make a new scene set. So what you do is you click on scene sets here, you right click and say add scene set. We'll call it test. Now you can associate a camera with this scene set. I don't use it that way. I have my view sets control what angle I'm going to use. So I'm going to leave camera as none. I'm going to hit OK. So right now, think of it as it's recording what you're doing, kind of. We have tests. So I'm going to change the color of this paint. Let's make this red, and we'll make this one here kind of bluish. Like that. We are going to rotate this front wheel. To positive 25. So now that wheel's turned. And just for funsies, just to show you exactly everything that this does, I have the right wheel. I am going to move that wheel out here, just for whatever reason. I'm going to hit OK. Right now, everything I just did was recorded. If I go back to yellow background under my scene sets, it goes back to that yellow car. If I go back to test now, my color changed, my wheels turned, and my other wheels is sticking out of the car now. So you're saving different scenarios of your vehicle. What's nice about this is you can see material switches very quickly. So let's say I wanted to see what this looked like in black. There we go. Now remember, this was active, so it's still recording. If I go back to yellow, there's the silver wheel. I would test very quickly. I can see what it looks like in black without having to put a new material on there. So that's what I was doing with these scene sets. Now I can go back to my background, go to a view set, and it doesn't change my car, but it changes my background and my lighting scenario. So what I would do now is I would go to my scene sets down here and say I want the yellow one, double click on it, switches my car to the yellow with my wheels turned how I want it, and now I'm into my next scene. So that's what I was using. I'm using a combination of scene sets and view sets to switch between scenes quickly within one model and without duplicating any geometry whatsoever up here. So it's a very nice feature. So let's say I'm going to use this background. We had this car like this. Now I got to pick an angle to fit to this background. What I usually do is I have a ground plane on here. Well, I thought I had a ground plane. Oh, there we go. There it is. What I do usually is I see this ground plane, the edge of this plane, and I usually try to match it up with my horizon and the scene over here. KeyShot 5, they have added the match backplate, which I also use once in a while, and I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not real quick on that yet, so I'm not going to go into how to use it because I'm not fully proficient at that yet. But before we had that option, this is how I would set up my my cameras a lot of times. Uh-oh, don't do that. No. Almost stopped the whole webinar here. So I'd get my my ground plane down as close as possible, the way I think it should be, and then after I do that, is then I would work with my perspective, things of that nature for the background to pick my angle. Then we would put the dome on. Let me turn off the lights here. I got an IS light on. There we go. I don't know what to say about these, about what I do with these domes, because I never do the same thing twice. That's the thing. I usually don't save my materials. I usually make materials from scratch every time I do a scene. Unless it's a job that has multiple vehicles with the same materials, and we'll start working with material templates. But if I'm doing a hero image or a single image, everything's done from scratch. I would, again, I just try to find the lighting.
So Tim,
yeah. What's up?
Yeah, I was just wondering, I see your brightness in your environment is set to 2.37, which is, it's kind of a higher value. When I use my brightness and contrast settings, I tend to keep them at the default of 1. So I'm wondering, what's the thought behind that brightness? When do you turn up that setting? Is it to help balance the IES lights you have in the scene? Do you use the HDRI editor at all when creating your environment?
Okay, good question. Okay, if I do not use the HDR editor through Lexion here, I will use the brightness contrast on this slider. So yes, I will. I'm changing this depending on the background that I'm using. If I have a background that has a high contrast, I will go into the contrast and increase that a little bit. And what that usually does is gives you a harder shadow and more light going into this scene. If it's a dull scene with very soft shadows, your contrast will either be at 1 or you go below 1. That will open up your materials more, adds more light to everything, gives you a softer feel. I also will work with the settings tab. I don't know what happened there. And I also work with the gamma here. I very rarely will use this brightness. The only time I use this brightness is if I'm doing an image that has a background. If the image does not have a background, let's say I'm just doing a studio shot, no background, I will not touch this brightness. If you decrease this brightness without a background, your image will be kind of see-through, and that kind of freaks people out sometimes. So I just kind of stay away from that unless I have a background, then it doesn't matter with it. What happened here?
You're in performance mode.
There it goes. I don't remember hitting it. So I will mess with the gamma. If I feel that my blacks are crushed, I can't see what's going on, I will increase my gamma, and that will open up my darks so I can start seeing a little bit more shape in them. You see, I increased the gamma to 2.15, and you can see that tire a little bit more. But again, that gamma is going to be depending on what your background gamma is. So what you're doing is you're looking for the shadow areas inside your background, and then you want your shadow areas on your car to match as close as possible to the gammas of the shadows on your background. So that's why this gamma is important. So you're trying to find that right, that right dark tones for the background. Now, if I decide that I need to go into the editor, HDR editor, I change everything. I set all this back to default, which is 1, 1, and 2. And once I do that, that's when I go into the HDR editor. Why do I do that? The way I look at it is I don't want to have to worry about, oh man, I need a bigger screen. I don't want to have to worry about my brightness and contrast in this screen and what I did with my model itself. I'd rather control everything in one area and leave the other one alone. So I will put everything as default within the BIP, and then I change the settings here inside the editor. Since I'm in there fixing things anyhow, I want to do everything done inside this HDZ when it's saved out. I also will have the rotation to 0. I will do the rotation inside the editor. So now once I save this this HDR out, or HDZ, it saves my brightness, my contrast, and my rotation. I don't have to worry about what I have in here. And I know that this is always at default. So if for some reason this gets jacked up and I saved it and I didn't realize what happened, next time I open it, I know I just put these back to default and everything should be back to the way it should be. Did that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. Very cool. How about those couple of pins you have in your editor there? Can you talk about those?
Yep. Okay, so let me turn these off. Another thing I do is I will turn off this back plate just for a moment so I can see the actual environment. And I will try to rotate the environment as close as possible to what the back plate was, if you have an environment with the back plate. So if I turn this back on, I can see where I'm at. All right. So if we keep this environment somewhere in this area, you should be almost one-to-one with your background. So the lighting is correct. Okay. Now that I have that done, I will work on my my gamma, my contrast, brightness. When using a HDR, I will use pins, and 9 times out of 10, this pin I will convert to a blend, which I'm missing. There we go. You have options here. You have an add, you have a blend, an alpha, and a screen. If I add a pin to an HDR, I usually add blend, because what I want is I don't want to add foreign color to my vehicle, because then now my vehicle is not matching my background. So I'm going to blend this light within these pixels, so it's going to pick up the colors of the background or the HDR. So if this is brown in this area, it's going to be even more brown. It's just intensifying those pixels. I don't want to add foreign color. A lot of times when you look at CG work, some of the dead giveaways is your car palette, color palette is not the same as your background color palette, and just a dead giveaway. You want to try to get the colors within your background into your car. So that's why I'll use the blend mode. If the blend mode doesn't quite give me what I want, I leave it on blend, and then I will actually pick up a color that wherever that light's at. So if I say it's over here, I actually add that color of the background to the light, and that will help get the correct color and tones into the scene for the on the car. So that's what that's all about there.
All right, yeah, that was a very good tip. While you're talking about the dead giveaways, we had a question that's asking, assuming you start with a good model and import into KeyShot, what do you feel makes or breaks a render, and what are some of those other dead giveaways?
Okay. What makes and breaks? One of the first things that you'll notice is your gamma ranges from the car to the background. They're always, a lot of times they're off. So like your shadow areas of the car it's not dark enough. It's kind of milky. So you need to add, you got to fix your gammas. Another thing is bad mask. So let's say you cut a tire out, you cut a mask for the tire, and you enhance the tire, make it a little bit brighter, this and that. You have fringe a lot of times when you make a mask, and you can see a little white pixels going around the outside of the vehicle or wherever you cut. That's a dead giveaway. Which what you need to do is at the end is you need to clean up all those frayed edges and blend them into the background. The car is usually too crisp for the background you're using. A lot of times the background's just a low-res background, and you got this super crisp, beautiful car. I mean, this looks like you cut and pasted it on there. So you got to, even though the car looks awesome the way you have it, you got to dumb it down a little bit to fit it into the background more. I mean, the whole reason why we're doing this is to mimic photography, right? So you got to, if you have to make the image a little bit softer, then that's what you need to do to fit it into that background. Another thing that's a dead giveaway is your foreground. A lot of times is softer than your car. So if you're doing a close-up shot, like I have here, this foreground in this area needs to be as crisp as possible and fade out as it gets farther away. You see a lot of times that the foreground is very soft and mushy, and then they got the tire on it that's very crisp, and that too is a dead giveaway. You got to try to somehow get either a higher res background, or you got to dumb down the image a little bit fuzz-wise, to get a little bit softer to fit into that background. Warms and cools, anything closer to you is more the warm families. Anything you get further away from the camera or your eye, you want to be in the cool. So you got to work with that too. Another dead giveaway is, you see we have a lot of like greens and browns in this area up here. Now if I put a light here and I have a lot of blues and yellows in it, or reds, that it doesn't match the background. The background's not dictating that color should be there on the car. So it's very important to keep the color palette of your background onto your car. A lot of times you see like a white car and it's lit really nice, but they have too much color in the light and the car might look blue, like a very light blue or a light green. You're like, well, is the car white or is it green? So it's that kind of stuff that you got to keep an eye on. Background lighting is key. I mean, getting the correct colors of your background onto your vehicle is very important to make a good image. Another thing you want to look out for, let me get this done, is when you do pick your angle, and you got to watch out for your tangents. What do I mean by a tangent? Now you can see I have this vehicle, it's up, we'll say over the horizon line, and it's making the car look like it's in the forefront. If I move this car down and I move it, this horizontal line, close to this wall horizontal line, we call that tangents. And now this car doesn't look as dramatic, as heroic as it did before. It looks flatter, the image looks not as nice. But if I move this car up a little bit and break that tangent from this horizontal and the wall horizontal, that car all of a sudden just pops off the background a little bit more at you. So you got to try to minimize them, we'll call tangents, as much as possible. So if you're rotating this car around and you got to watch this edge, you don't want to get the back end of your car right on this edge because you're flattening out your image. You want to either go before it or go after it. You want to break that tangent. And then not only do you have to watch out for those tangents, you got to watch out for tangents on your car itself. So one of the areas would be the wheel turn, right? So if I have this car rotated this way, you can see that the wheel tangent and the wheel and the inside fender here are touching each other. We'll call that a tangent. Now if I rotate this camera more, so I break that tangent, now that wheel feels like it's sitting better into the vehicle. Or you would do the rotation on the wheel itself. I'm just moving the model just quicker. But you want to break that tangent. Now you can't stop all tangents, but if you notice them, you want to try to stop them as much as possible. So now that I rotated this, I can see I have a tangent over in this rear corner here. I just think it's too close to this wall. I would try to manipulate this so I can get that up just a little bit higher, just so I can break that tangent. That makes sense?
Yeah, it sure does. You touched on materials a little bit with the headlamp material that you use. Could you go over maybe some of the materials that you use for body, for lights, tires,
Perfect.
things that aren't so obvious maybe?
I think I said it in the last webinar, the one material that I use most is metallic paint. I will use metallic paint for paint. I use metallic paint for chrome. Not very often will I use metal chrome for chrome. Why do I do that? The reason why I do that is you're able to take that metallic paint and make it shiny and mirror just like a chrome. At the same time, you can tone it back and bring back the shape of your part. I have sometimes, depending on how contrast your lighting is, when you use regular chrome metal material, you get blowout. It just gets white, and you can't get any shape back to the part. So I'm going to make this particular part chrome, metal chrome. All right. Okay, so now this is real chrome, and I don't like how white it is down in here. There's not a lot of shape to this part, so I would tone down the color. But I'm still getting a lot of white. The color's getting darker. There's no doubt about that. But my white is still blown out. I'm not getting any shape. Now it's starting to come in. But now I feel that this chrome up here is way too dark to be chrome. You know, you're losing a lot of shape up here. So you're always battling that. So one thing you can do is, instead of having your roughness at 0, you can increase the roughness of the chrome. That's one way you can try to stop this. So I add a little bit of roughness to it. You can see a little bit of shape came back. Now, what I suggest, anytime you have chrome and you add roughness to it, you have to go to samples and make it at least 32. And what that does is, when it renders, this will be very smooth. Okay? If you left it at 9 or 4, depending on your lighting situation, you could get a lot of noise into this material if you don't increase your samples. Now, the question could be is, why don't you crank up your samples on your render? Well, let me say, when I do my rendering, 90% of my rendering, this is my settings, okay? I always render TIFF 32-bit. I will do a clown pass and a depth pass. Sometimes I use a depth pass, sometimes I don't, but it's there, so I always render with it. But I always have a clown pass. Everything has a clown pass. For my quality, I will have samples at 16. My ray bounces are always at 16. Anti-aliasing, it doesn't matter. You can have it at whatever you want there. I have cranked it up to 120 just to see. There's a little bit of change, but so I just leave it at 1. Shadows, I leave at 1 if I have a ground plane on, which I always have a ground plane on. When you have a ground plane on, you don't have to worry about having your ground shadow turned on over here. Your shadow is being created from the ground plane. Now, if you don't have a ground plane on, then you need your shadow turned on, and that's when I would take this shadow and either I'd do 2 renders. I'd do 1 render with 1 just so I can get the rendering done quickly, and then I will take the car, make it emissive, the whole thing, invisible to camera, and then I'll render out just the ground shadow. And I can show you that real quick in a minute. But this is 90% of the time, these are my settings right here. Now, I will crank up samples, but the samples are cranked up on the material itself, not on the whole render. If you increase your samples here, your rendering will be much slower than if you just increase the samples on what particular materials that you're using. And ray bounces is, I just keep it at 16, always. Now I just lost train of thought. What were we talking about here? What was your question? Rex, what was the question?
You
We
were
were just talking about
going over the
materials.
Materials. Okay. So this metal one, I added a little roughness to it, and if you do add roughness to a metal, chrome, I would definitely increase your samples to give you a nice smooth metal. Now, if that still doesn't the way I want it, I will change this to a metallic paint. Just that alone, you can already start seeing some of the shape of the part. Remember earlier I talked about shape and what the part looks like along with the material. So now I'm starting to see the shape of this wheel. I mean, you didn't have any of this detail in here before, or this up here, but it's a little too soft for chrome. So I'm going to take the metal coverage, I am going to crank it all the way up to the end here, and now it automatically is starting to look like chrome. It's still a little soft, but you're starting to look more like chrome. I can take the clear coat and set that to 0. And now I can add color. I can get a little bit darker. It gives you a little bit more flexibility, and you can see the shape of the part more when you use metallic for different materials besides paint. I would crank up my samples to 32. And then now when this renders out, it's going to look beautiful. And you can use the metal roughness to 0, and now you have pure shine. But look at how much more shape you have in this wheel than you did if you use regular straight metal. You didn't have any of the shape in it before. So that's why I use metallic paint on some things depending on my lighting scenario.
Also show shadowing using emissives on the car.
Yes.
So
Okay.
I want to touch on that too.
I did talk about that just a second ago. So this is what we're going to do. I'm going to turn off the ground plane here. When I do that, you should... Oh, I must have turned on my ground shadow over here. I did. Okay. So it should have looked like this when I turn off the ground plane. You're going to turn on your ground shadow. Now what I'll do is, we'll say we rendered this car out, and now I want to render it out because I want just the shadow. What you're going to do is you're going to go to your very top node that has all your parts and pieces in it. It doesn't matter what material you use. You're going to make it all one material. All I'm doing is taking the material and sliding it and dropping it right on top of the group or node that has all your parts. And my whole car will turn chrome. Once I have that, I open up that material, and it's set at metal. I'm going to make it emissive. Now, once you turn it to emissive, you just leave the intensity at 1. You want visible and shadows on. You want visible and reflections turned off. And you want visible to camera turned off. And now you have just the ground shadow. So if you render that out with TIFF with alpha, you'll have just the ground shadow that you can place underneath your car. Now if I'm doing an image with no background, say it has to be on a clear background, so let me turn off my, my back plate, so we'll go to color. The tendency is to render on white. When you do that, what happens is that TIFF, you have white pixels within this ground shadow. So when you put that on your vehicle and you have a transparent background, it looks fine, but the moment your client puts a color background on it, all that white pixels come out and it doesn't look right. So what we do is we render this on a black background. Now, even though it looks just like a big black screen, when you render this as a TIFF with alpha, you'll get your black shadow, and you'll be able to put any color background behind it, and you won't have any white pixels interfering with it. It looks exactly how it should look.
That was an awesome tip, Tim. So it's 11 o'clock. Josh, should we wrap things up here, or what do you think?
I'd go for another hour, man.
Oh, look out. We can go with another question and wrap it up with one more if anybody's got anything else. Do we have any on the list there, Rex?
Nothing huge. Somebody's asking about labels in the scene. Those Ferrari emblems, were those labels? Were those brought in from Maya as texture maps, or are they geometry?
Those were labels.
Maybe you
It
can
was
just
already
quickly
UV
talk
map
about your
prior.
mapping.
It was UV map prior. Disregard. So it kind of fell into place. But labeling is, those are fun. Let's do one. All right. If I click on that, we're going to go to labels. We're going to add label. So let's see what we got here. Oh, you know what? I didn't go over the ground, how to get different grounds.
And also maybe something you can touch on is the that blue image.
Yeah, yeah.
The background you created for that.
Yeah, I wanted to show an easy way of making backgrounds. Okay, I have a label inside here. Obviously we don't know where it's at yet. I'm going to hit position and click on the sheet metal. And good Lord willing. Kidding me? Normal projection. Yeah, normal projection. Oh, there it is. Just took a second. Looks like my machine's starting to run slow here. Okay, so you put your label on. The position thing, this thing's awesome. You just click anywhere on the sheet metal now, and that label should follow wherever you click your mouse. So let's say we want the KeyShot on this the shoulder here, this of the Ferrari. We'll say in that general area, and then you're just going to work the angle a little bit. You can use PNGs with alphas, so you can you don't have so you can have that the words cut out perfectly. All right, and now one other thing here, label properties. Right now the specular is on black, so you're not going to see any white highlights. But if you turn that to white or whatever color you want, you now are able to get a little sheen. Now you mess with the refraction index, and you'll start getting the highlights or the highlights from the dome onto your label. If you're getting some of your label cut off, like you see here, it says KeyShot and the T's cut off, that's your depth. Just increase the depth there, and that T should come into existence. There it is. So I just made that a little bit bigger on the depth, and then more of the label comes showing. So if your label comes in and you only see a little bits and pieces of it, it might be the depth of that label. You just got to increase the depth, and you'll see the whole label. Okay. Let's touch base on the ground real quick here. This will be the last thing we do. I've been doing, as you can see here, we have a ground and has a texture on it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off the car. This is one thing this is another thing I do if I'm doing like a studio shot. This is how I attack it. I'm going to turn everything off but the ground plane. So we're just dealing with that. And let me turn on the background so it's a little bit brighter. Okay. This particular ground, we'll look at the properties here. It's just your basic plastic, and then I have a bump on there, and I have an opacity map. This opacity map is what's giving us the circle. So let's turn off the bump. Let's put on a whole different ground. What I have here in my textures is a ground folder, and I've just saved off a bunch of different grounds that I've found. Let's pick one. I've made specular maps and bump maps out of them, so we'll just pick, we'll do ground 1. Let me pick the ground 1 diffuse. There it goes. Here's the bump. Put that on. Nope, I was supposed to do the diffuse darter. There we go, diffuse. And I'm going to do the specular. And I'm going to do the bump. Okay. you want your planar to be Y, I'm going to add brightness. I'm going to sync everything, make that Y. Make this 50. Turn that off. Come on. I'm just trying to make it bigger here. It's not really showing up good, is it? Let's do this. There we go. All right. You know, sorry about this, guys. I usually this kind of happens quickly. I don't understand why. Because I want to show you that you can make this roughness. You can actually make a shiny floor. You can make it look like a hockey arena floor, or make it not so rough. Let me turn on the IS lights. Maybe that's what I'm missing. Go 200. Shoot. All right, well, we were going good here until this happened. Here, let me get rid of that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new ground. Ground plane. There we go. All right, we got a ground plane. I will change that ground plane to a plastic to start off with, and it should look like this. Let me turn off the IS lights for one moment. All right. All right, so that's it right there. I'm going to add a texture to the ground. All right, let's just, come on now. Let's do that one. All right, we're going to make this ground a Y plane. We're going to increase the scale. There we go. So we have this as a ground. I'm going to load a specular. Now it doesn't have to be, the specular doesn't have to be this map. It could be a totally different map if you wanted to. And that's what gives you some different looks. But we'll put the specular on, and we will put a bump. Right there. With your bump maps, what you guys we need to be aware of is sometimes you get a little bit too big with the height of the map, of the bump, and you want to keep it as low as possible but still see some ridges. Okay, and then sometimes altogether you just don't even want to bump it, just ruining the whole look. So you got to play. A lot of times, most of the time when I do a bump, it's usually between 0.1 and 0.25. I don't usually have it at 1 on most things that I do. So now that I have a specular map on, I can adjust the brightness of it, and I can adjust the brightness of the floor to be a little bit darker. I also can adjust how shiny it is, right? So right now it's kind of shiny. I can add roughness to it, and it's going to disperse the reflection. So let me turn the car back on real quick. So here we go. You can see the car inside on the ground. Very slick, and then more roughness. You're kind of dispersing the reflection. Now what I will do after I get this the way I want it is I will put a opacity map on it to give me just the ground that I'm looking for. Go up here. Well, we go. Again, that's going to be a on the Y. Turn it on and turn it off. Turn the repeat off. I just want that, and I'm going to make this 100. Now you can see the ground starting to come up underneath the car. We'll say 150. So now if you get up in here, you can see we have a nice ground that's reflecting the car. And if you had IS lights turned on, that too is going to affect how shiny or what this is going to look like. All right, so that is too big. We'll go 100. Make this darker. Okay. Now, let's say we want our background, whatever color background you want to use. You can put your own background in here and have this on top of it. And now I'm going to make this ground. I'm going to blend that with red. So now you're starting to make your own ground with your car. And what's nice about doing this kind of stuff is if you do an animation, now you have your ground rolling with your animation, which just adds, you know, a lot to the animation, being able to see the ground move. And your IS lights will affect the ground. You get bounce light and things of that nature. So if you sit there and play with it, you can get some really cool looking grounds. You know, make them dull, make them shiny, all different kinds. If you turn off the car, you just start saving these off. You start saving off these grounds at different elevations, down, low, high, different background colors, and now you're starting to create your own set of backgrounds to use with vehicles or whatever else you want to use with your products. So that's some quick ways of making backgrounds within KeyShot here. I mean, obviously it takes some time, but this is just a quick version here.
That is just absolutely wonderful, Tim. This whole webinar has been great.
So there you go. Oh, hold on. There you go. I lightened up the, sorry about that, the diffuse, and now you can see some of that ground a little bit more.
Oh, wow.
I'm going to turn off the bump, so that gives you a whole nother look. You get see what I'm saying? So you can really start making some cool stuff. So this bump here, even though it's at 0.15, is still too heavy for most cases, so maybe 0.05. And you just want to hint that there's something going on the ground. So yeah, I mean, the world, you know, is opened up when you start doing stuff like this. You can really personalize, you know, your backgrounds for that shot. And what's nice doing this is the lights that you do use and the dome that you use is reflecting onto the ground, which reflects onto the car. So now you're getting that whole color palette all in one. So that's when your image looks like how it should. Everything is just working. So yeah, start using this. You guys will love it. Okay, I'm done now. Sorry.
Great. Thanks, Tim. And we are out of time now. We will have this up on our YouTube channel and on the KeyShot website. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. Oh, and don't forget, there's the KeyShot Auto Render and Animation Contest going on right now. So submit your entries over at the forum. And then check out the webinar, this webinar, and the others on the YouTube channel. And we've got tutorials and quick tips over there also. We'll see you all next time.
Thanks, guys.